the Bucks are making moves as they have made multiple signings, and one signing they just made may surprise a lot of you. So I'm going to break down exactly who these players are and what impact they could have on the Bucks team as the season inches closer and closer. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get into it, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. If you're part of the 80% who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're less than 100 subscribers away from 1,000, which has been a big goal of mine for a while. So if you want to help us reach that goal and you're a part of the 80% and you enjoy daily Bucks content, smash that subscribe button for me. But let's dive right into it. There's a lot of news to go over today, specifically surrounding transactions at this point. The Milwaukee Bucks season is getting underway. They have a preseason game again against the Mavericks as well today, but they made multiple moves and they just made a signing that is interesting to say the least, and it's a name that a lot of you out there are probably familiar with, but are surprised that at this point of his career got a deal. Now, it is not a standard NBA contract, but it is an Exhibit 10 deal, and that player is Justice Winslow. So this was at the time of recording about 30 minutes ago. Justice Winslow has signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Milwaukee Bucks, and this is a very interesting one. Again, we're getting really close to the regular season now, but transactions are still being made for this team, and Justice Winslow is a very, very interesting player, and you'd think that at this point, he's been around for so long that he's in his 30s, his mid-30s, and he's a veteran. He is a bit of a veteran, but he is only 27 years old right now. And the last season that he had in the NBA was the season before last in 2022-2023 when he played with the Portland Trail Blazers for a couple of years before not playing in the NBA last year. But even in his last full year, he does some things very well. Now, again, a lot of fans out there, myself, I thought that he was in his early 30s, but he's actually only 27 years old, and they signed him to an Exhibit 10 deal. So again, it's not something that guarantees him a roster spot or anything like that, but it's definitely an interesting contract and an interesting time to sign a guy like Justice Winslow very close to the regular season starting. I don't think he's going to factor into the equation necessarily right away, but he's a guy that has had some very good seasons, most notably and most predominantly with the Miami Heat when he was considered one of the up-and-coming wings in this league. Whether he plays shooting guard, small forward, power forward, he kind of play everywhere. He's very good defensively, and again, in his prime, he was averaging 13 or so points a game with some very solid to elite defense, but he hasn't been able to sustain that throughout his career. In his last full season, full in quotes, he played 29 games with the Trailblazers. Before that, obviously played some time with the Clippers and had some very interesting seasons. But at this point of his career, it's an interesting signing that the Milwaukee Bucks wanted to make here. And again, it's probably just some depth. It's going to be interesting to see what they actually do. And again, with Exhibit 10 deals, they're going to have to make subsequent moves if they actually want to get him up to the roster. And I don't think that's something that they're going to do at this point unless a trade is coming or something of that nature to make room. Because even if you could just add him to the NBA team, which you cannot do on an Exhibit 10 contract, there probably wouldn't be much space for him to even play, especially ahead of some of the other guys, whether it's their draft picks, whether it's the guys they've signed like Taurean Prince. He would be pretty down in the depth chart, but they want to get a look at him. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But they also made a plethora of other moves here, and another guy here, which is very interesting, is Henry Ellenson, and he's been around for a while as well. They've signed big man Henry Ellenson to a non-guaranteed contract, according to Eric Nem of The Athletic. He was, if you think way back to almost 8 years ago now, about 8 years ago, 18th overall pick in the 2016 draft. He played 83 regular season games for the Pistons, time with the Knicks, times with the Nets, time with the Raptors from 2016 to 2021. And again, this guy hasn't been in the NBA since 2021. But it's interesting. Another guy that's been around for a very long time, but is still young, relatively young. He's 27 years old, and earlier in his G League career, he averaged upwards of 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists while playing 34 minutes a game in 73 games. So the Bucks are kind of signing guys at this point that aren't necessarily old, and they're pretty young, and they still have a lot of life left in their career if they can sustain decent play. But they've been around the NBA at multiple times, multiple junctures, and with multiple teams. So it's some experience being added, maybe to add some more competitiveness to the camp. And in all likelihood, the Bucks signing of Ellenson is designed to secure his NBA G League rights and to ensure that he earns an Exhibit 10 bonus worth a maximum of $77.5 thousand if he spends at least 60 days with the Wisconsin Herd this season. Assuming that's the plan, he'll be waived in the coming days before reporting to the Herd later this month. As Milwaukee now has a full preseason roster of 21 players, the Bucks will have to get down to a maximum of 18 players by next Monday afternoon. And again, they're going to have a bunch of subsequent moves. Now, whether they're playing with Justice Winslow is on a similar trajectory to play in the G League with the Wisconsin Herd is still up in the air. Again, I don't think these guys are going to make an immediate NBA impact. There's just no way for them to slide in unless they make a bunch of subsequent moves. The most likely outcome here is they waive them, both of them, and they get, delegated to the G League. But I think at this point, Ellenson's an interesting guy. And again, we talk about the Bucks big men situation. They have Bobby Portis. Other than that, there's not much going on there. They signed guys like Liam Robbins, who's gotten some run in the preseason, but there hasn't been too much depth to the power forward position. Again, Giannis can play and does. Giannis is obviously their starting power forward, but he can play center. They have Bobby Portis. They, of course, have Brook Lopez. Those are kind of the three guys. When you're looking at actual full-on big men, they're still kind of searching for an established third-string big man. And it might sound funny saying established third-string big men, but when you're looking at the way that this team is constructed, if you get one game of foul trouble from Giannis or from Brook Lopez or even an injury to Bobby Portis, hopefully that doesn't happen, but even foul trouble from Bobby Portis, things are looking very thin in the sense of power forward. You might even have, at that point, Taurean Prince having to slide up and play the power forward position. So having guys like this bearing an injury who can play in the G League and refine their game, they've been around before, they can come up then and start to, if they need to, play for the Milwaukee Bucks, get used and acclimated to the system. So I don't mind either of these signings. Again, they're more so depth at this point of the offseason, but they're very interesting, specifically Justice Winslow, considering the fact that he's a name that a lot of fans have heard of. Again, his time in Miami was looking very prominent. He finished, I believe, 6th in Rookie of the Year voting in his rookie season at 19 years old. There was a time where he was considered a pretty big trade chip for Miami. At this point now, he's not that. But if he can go to the G League, refine his game, maybe make an impact as a two-way wing on the Milwaukee Bucks, bearing some moves. Maybe they get rid of Pat Connaughton. His name has been floating around in trade rumors. Maybe he could be again, they don't play the same position. Justice is probably more of a small forward, power forward at this point. But again, if you could slide in and maybe just back up whoever they trade away, assuming some moves happen, it could be interesting later on in the season. Or it's more so depth at this point, especially when we know the Bucks are going to be making moves at the trade deadline. So let me know in the comments your thoughts are on that. And one quick note, in order to make room for a lot of these guys, the Bucks have waived guard James Akingo, making him a free agent after initially signing him to a non-guaranteed deal. Promising young guard known for his playmaking will now likely shift his focus once again to the G League, where Akingo is expected to join the Wisconsin Herd, spend some time developing. And this guy's a bit of an interesting situation because he's a lot younger. He actually has a lot of time to develop, and he needs to do that in the G League. He's not NBA ready. Guys like AJ Johnson are obviously probably going to spend some time with the actual, Bucks team and develop in that way. But a guy like Akingo is probably going to go ahead and spend some time with the Wisconsin Herd. But I'm sure if you're a James Akingo fan out there, you're probably a bit upset. But let me know in the comments your thoughts are on all of this. Out of these couple of moves, which one are you most intrigued about? It's going to be very interesting to see what the impact is going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Bucks finalize their roster before Monday to prepare for the regular season. But we'll see you guys soon.